A scientist at the University of Michigan once listed what he considered to be the 10 basic dangers to our society. The first was the possibility of nuclear war. No surprise there. The second was the prospect of a worldwide epidemic, such as famine or disease. And the third was the quality of leadership in our institutions. Let me repeat that. Lack of effective leadership rated directly behind nuclear war and famine. Incredible, right? When you know your life's purpose, it helps to inform all your major life decisions. What you study in school, where you choose to live, who you choose to connect with, and even what you do on your weekends. But I wasn't one of those people. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. But this lack of direction has actually afforded me a world of experience. Over the last 20 years, I have had the opportunity to work with and for leaders throughout the community and beyond in the public and private sector. I have run for political office twice. I have served in numerous professional roles, and I'm currently working on my Ph.D. in leadership. All of this has had a hand in cultivating my skills and experience. It's been a lot of trial and error, plenty of error, which has brought me to where I am today. And most of these experiences have been positive, but some, well, not so much. But as Norman Schwarzkopf said, you learn far more from the negative leadership than from the positive, because you learn how not to do it, and therefore you learn how to do it. Leadership is an interesting phenomenon. Although there are many factors that can help determine an effective leader, at the end of the day, we as a society still believe charisma is essential to great leadership. But there is still much controversy that surrounds this, whether charisma is born or made, whether it is truly effective, and moreover, whether it is an ethical construct. If I were to ask you what Catherine the Great and Vladimir Putin had in common, you would easily be able to tell me that they were both rulers of Russia. What you may not be able to tell me, however, is both actually came into power by accident, both are considered highly charismatic leaders, and both are alive and well and living in my house. I'd like to introduce you to Catherine and Putin. I introduce these two to you for 3 reasons. 1, because they're cats and they serve as a distraction from me standing in front of you. 2, because they're really cute, the cats, not the leaders. And 3, because they're actually relative to my topic today, the leaders, not the cats. So let's talk about charisma. Renowned theorist Max Weber's concept of charismatic leadership was one of his most defining contributions to sociology. He defined charisma as the quality of an individual personality by virtue of which he or she is set apart from ordinary men or women and is seen as endowed with supernatural, superhuman, or at least exceptional powers or qualities. This is a pretty verbose definition, but most theorists are. If you were to ask me in a non-scholarly way how to define charisma, I would tell you it's a lot like great style. You know it when you see it. But this is an abstraction. However, at the end of the day, we as a society rely on glimpses and sound bites, what we see, what we hear, what moves us in helping to determine what makes a great leader. But is this the best way? Martin Luther King Jr., Winston Churchill, Mahatma Gandhi, and the Dalai Lama were all considered highly charismatic leaders. We love them, we quote them, we live by their mantras. But I believe they were the exception, not the rule. While they were considered dramatic speakers, most of their time was not spent giving charismatic speeches, but rather in the microcosms of working with small groups and moving their ideas forward. I believe we find charisma so essential to leadership because we have such a difficult time defining leadership. And charisma can be a useful tool, but it also has a dark side. Charisma has the ability to fog our perception between a leader who is confident and one who is actually competent. Think about this. According to renowned psychologist Tomas Chamorro, there are truly only 3 ways to influence others: force, reason, or charisma. Whereas force and reason are rational, charisma is not. Charisma is based on emotional exploitation and has the ability to trump any rational assessment which can bias our viewpoint. Charismatic leaders influenced by charm rather than reason. In extreme cases, when they run out of charm, they may revert to force. I give you the patron saint of mass manipulation, Adolf Hitler. Charisma also disguises psychopaths. Although you don't have to be a psychopath to be charming, many psychopaths are charismatic because it hides their antisocial tendencies, so they manage to get away with it. I'd like to introduce you to two of them now. For those of you who may not recognize this guy, this is Jim Jones, American cult leader. Jim began his preaching career promoting racial equality in his church at a time that wasn't widely common, and he had a vision for a peaceful utopia. What Jim ultimately became known for, however, was the Jonestown Massacre. And as the leaders of the People's Temple, he led more than 900 followers in a mass suicide via cyanide-laced Kool-Aid. If you've ever heard the term drinking the Kool-Aid, you can thank this guy. Marshall Applewhite Jr., son of a preacher, wanted to follow in his father's footsteps, graduated at the top of his class, went on to study pre-theology and opera in college, became an opera singer and a university professor, got married and had 2 children. Later in life, he would found what's known as Heaven's Gate Religious Group, and in 1997, he would organize the mass suicide of 39 people. While that might not seem like much, it was the largest mass suicide in United States history. Charisma also fosters collective narcissism. People are charmed by others when they share their core values and principles. If you think Barack Obama is charming, try asking the average Republican. If you think Donald Trump is charming, try asking the average Democrat. People are charmed by others when they share their core values and principles. Overall, charisma is still a behavior in research. While many theorists believe that charisma can be learned, researchers look to measure elements systemically and without bias. The definition uses outcomes, but definition should be independent of outcomes. However, the statistics are stunning. The Center for Creative Leadership conducted a study of thousands of leaders globally. What they found was 50% of leaders and managers appeared to be ineffective or incompetent. 38% of new chief executives failed within their first 18 months on the job. And in the last 2 decades, 30% of Fortune 500 CEOs lasted less than 3 years. Their reasons for failure had nothing to do with competence, knowledge, or experience, but rather to do with pride and ego. So why am I telling you all of this? Because I do not think that charisma should be the litmus test of great leadership. This coming Tuesday, we will have the opportunity to vote for the position which dominates American politics, and I'm sure you all cannot wait for it to be over. Before I go on, I'm going to ask you to suspend judgment of these 2 candidates and stick with me relative to the topic that I'm talking about today. When the vetting of the presidential primary candidates came into purview, I can almost guarantee very few of you would have thought Donald Trump would have been our Republican nominee. But he struck a chord with so many voters that were fed up with the political system, and I watched with fascination as he rose through the ranks and he continued to outlast the 16 other candidates. I shouldn't have been surprised. Max Weber would not have been. When there is a crisis of public confidence in the governmental world, which has been going on for some time now, citizens will choose the polar opposite, an anti-establishment, charismatic leader. And in many ways, Donald Trump fits that mold. While he clearly is not eloquent, he has the ability to move the more emotional parts of our brain while we disregard the rational. And he definitely leans towards the dark side. Throughout his campaign, he has created a strong sense of them versus us, which reinforces group psychology, and it makes it more difficult for individuals who are part of a collective group to make independent judgments and decisions. And he's not specific, which makes it more difficult to disagree with him. The truth is, he doesn't know any other way. He can only succeed by being the person that you have seen over the last several months. And he has been authentic, but not in an endearing way. So to those of you who say that Donald Trump should become a responsible politician, the truth is that Donald can only succeed by being the Donald. Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, is not seen as charismatic. She also comes with her own advantages and disadvantages. Many women will vote for her because she is a woman, and some feminists will not. Her rhetoric is very fact-driven and comes across as being very flat. As a result, most people do not find her energetic or convincing enough. And let's face it, competence rarely electrifies an audience. I recently conducted a study on these two candidates via social media, comparing their levels of charisma and execution. These statistics may not surprise you. What I found of the 300 responses that I received was nearly 50% of you ranked Donald Trump high on charisma, whereas only 15% of you gave Hillary the same marks. However, only 33% of you ranked Trump high on execution, whereas 68% of you gave Hillary the same marks. I'm not trying to sway you in either direction. I have issues with both of these candidates. But as I ran through this list of charismatic figures in history, it should have occurred to you that these individuals run the gamut. They can assume any ideological color, and they may be good or evil, but they all have several common denominators. They all arise in times of crisis, they all portray themselves to be courageous truth tellers, and they all are authentic in a positive and negative way. In the end, a great leader will distinguish himself through his vision, his openness, his commitment to others, and his willingness to always learn more. Plato said, when you are ill, you do not ask for the most handsome physician, nor the most eloquent one. Whoever you choose this coming Tuesday or any time in the future, do so critically. And should the opportunity present itself again where you think you have to choose the lesser of two evils, redirect your thinking and choose the person who will serve the greater good. Thank you.